I'm here on My Magical Thing with Caroline Tully, who is a scholar of religion and magic from prehistoric stuff through to emerging contemporary paganisms. You've got a doctorate in Aegean archaeology, is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, and obviously also a practitioner of a pagan and magical practitioner yourself. So Caroline, it's lovely to have you here on My Magical Thing. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be on My Magical Thing.
Please may we see your magical thing, Caroline.
Okay, here is my magical thing.
Whoa.
I'm going to turn it around slowly. Can you see it?
Yeah. Very cool.
So this magical thing is a model of a tree. So here it's made of wood. Basically, I really like it's this naive model of a tree. So I got this in Israel. I was working on an archaeological excavation at Caesarea, which is on the coast, and it's a big Roman port. And we were working on one of Herod's palaces. So King Herod I, client king of the Romans, king of Judea, had lots of palaces and did lots of elaborate building projects. And the reason I was there was because I was interested in garden archaeology, and so I was with a garden archaeology expert who had worked at that site for many years, and this particular palace, it's still there, so you can easily Google it and have a look. It had a big pool, and around the pool were these rock-cut pits, and that's where the plantings were. But of course, it's it's pretty much fallen into the sea. And another thing that was really interesting at that site was there's a well, and it was full of what we think were curse tablets, but Roman curse tablets are usually metal, or they're usually lead, and they have writing on them, and they're thrown into the well so that they, send a message to the underworld. But these were stone, and they weren't all square. Some of them were round, and some of them were triangular or oblong, and there were lots and lots and lots of them. And if they did have writing on them, it would have washed off. And we don't know if they were curse tablets, it's just that we can't work out what else they were. So I was cataloguing those and photographing them and things like that. And I guess I'll get to where I got the tree in a minute. But so why Herod is kind of interesting in regards to contemporary witchcraft is, so this is Herod the Great. It's, or he called himself Herod the Great. Don't know if he was so great, Herod the First. And he was also Herod, the biblical text talks about the massacre of the innocents, which probably didn't happen. But Herod was the great uncle of Herodias, and Herodias was a real person, but she got turned into a goddess of the witches in the medieval period, and she's come down to us as Aradia. So that's really interesting. And of course, Herodias was the mother of Salome of the Dance of the Seven Veils and the beheading of John the Baptist. But Herodias and Salome are a bit later than Herod. So they weren't there at, the period I was looking at. Anyway, so where I got this tree, we were staying at a moshav, which is like a communal, it's a communal farm. And like a kibbutz, except everyone, they don't do as much sharing, and they don't, put all their children in the child raising area, and, they live a bit separate. And there was an artist studio on the moshav, and they made these sort of wooden, naive, cutely painted objects. And I went there and I bought this tree. And why did I buy this tree? Because way back in time, before Herod the Great, before the codification of Judaism, back into the Iron Age 1 and back into the Bronze Age, the ancient Israelites were polytheistic, and they worshipped a goddess called Asherah, who was a tree. And Asherah was married to a god called El, and they had 70 sons, and one of them was called Yahweh, and he was the one who ended up being the god of the Jews and, of course, the Christians. And where, a lot of pagans are used to sort of this very oppressive biblical religion, and we tend to sort of discount biblical religion. But what is interesting is if, you go back in time, and there's even mentions of it in the Bible, but if you go back in time, the Israelites were pagans who had a nature religion. Their cult sites were characterized by, they would usually be in a high place. So it was called a Bama. And they'd be characterized by a tree or a symbolic tree called an Asherah, a stone called a Masaba, an altar, and maybe a little shrine. And I just love this sort of animate tree. I love the idea that there's this goddess who is a tree. And there's some later ceramic images in Israel of a female figure holding her breasts. So she's human up the top. She's holding her breast, but her bottom is just a column, and it's thought, we don't know for sure, but we think it's Asherah. And I'm also really interested in non-anthropomorphic gods, so just gods of the landscape, and in communicating with other than human persons. So trying to communicate with trees or stones and animals. It's one thing to channel a deity who may very well speak in a human language, even if it's a foreign language. It's another thing to try and sort of communicate with a tree or a stone who, well, they don't have vocal cords. Well, you know, gods kind of theoretically have vocal cords in their anthropomorphic forms, but they're really another order of being. And I sort of like to attempt divination through listening to or attempting to listen to trees and stones. And it's usually a lot easier if you take some sort of hallucinogenic drug, which can sort of help you get into a much more open state in which you can just, you know, talk to spirits of the trees. But it can be done without it. But I think especially with stones aren't in a hurry, so it's kind of quite hard, especially if you live in an urban sort of fast-paced situation like I do. Trying to slow down so that I can listen to a stone, that's kind of hard. But that's what I'm interested in doing, or one of the things I'm interested in doing. And I'm just really into Asherah, and so I have this as a reminder of early Israelite religion, Canaanite religion. So
Caroline,
that's what that is.
That's fantastic. That's really, really lovely to point at that kind of like deep animism that goes beyond the anthropomorphic and goes down into the sacredness of the trees and indeed the stones, and Asherah in this remarkable form.
Thanks. Yes, and I think I kind of think I need to promote her because she's still with us. I guess you could say she's still with us in the form of the Kabbalistic tree of life, as a sort of a conceptual, using a tree as a conceptual model. And she's also relevant in regards to Thelema because the Egyptian Nut or Nuit, at least in Egypt, is often in the form of a sycamore tree, and she gives sustenance to the dead. And I think that's really interesting as well, because we're used to her as the sky, but she's often a tree as well. So that's my magical thing.
Thank you very much, Caroline. That's most appreciated. Thank you very much for sharing your magical thing with us. That's great.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking me. Thanks.
Okay. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.